be speaking to you at this moment. It's a great chance that we have with your teacher to at least just have a different perspective about communication, about climate change, and what it means to us different people from different places. So I'm trying to share my screen right now. Just give me a moment.
Okay, so I'm going to share something, a presentation, so please get it.
Give me a moment.
Please take your time.
Sorry, can you see anything, Carl? Not yet.
I think it's still blacked out. Yeah. Wait.
And now?
We can't see anything yet.
And now?
Yeah. It's all good.
Okay, so you can see what I have here now. Okay, just confirm again, you're seeing my screen? Okay, great. So I'm going to take you through what we call ClimatEducate, which is a project that we run together with Carl and other people from around the continent. And so ClimatEducate, I'm going to tell you just a short story about what it is, what we do, and why it involves you as young people. So ClimatEducate is a project that was started in April 2016, and this is after a group of youth from the Philippines, among them Carl and other people, went for a training by former Vice President of the US, Al Gore. It's called Climate Reality Project. And then they came up with a project that ensures that with a project that aims to involve the youth in social and creative activism, though that involves both online and community projects. These are some of the team members. I'm sure you can recognize someone from this picture. Okay, so how do we do our advocacy? That is about combining climate change and education. So educating the youth and communities about climate change, because it involves all of us. And that's how ClimatEducate came in. We call it's an advocacy project of the Alpha Team organization. Then it involves, what can you see from this slide? Here is about environment. This is like a windmill. So it talks about wind energy. This is it's a bin, it's a garbage bin. So this talks about recycling of our garbage or whatever other waste that we have. And this is a solar panel. So it involves about using solar panels to create energy, renewable energy that is useful to the environment. And then this is about trees and the environment that we are seated next to. And then we do advocacy work through technology that involves social media. So we do that on Facebook, we do that on Instagram, and we do that on Twitter. And because young people use these platforms to communicate, it's easier to communicate to them about climate change and about the environment they're in through the technologies that they have easy access to, including tree planting and all that. So briefly, I'll just tell you where ClimatEducate youth advocates are located around the world. And from this map, I'm sure you can identify a few places. So the locations include ClimatEducate Project in Africa. That is where I am based. Then there is ClimatEducate Project in East Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific. Then we have ClimatEducate Project in South Asia. we have ClimatEducate Project in South America. So we have a collaboration of youth from around the globe in all these regional hubs coming together and using the power of the internet, social media to be able to communicate and tell the story and educate other people about climate change. So briefly, what are the objectives of ClimatEducate Project? So we create a network of young people, and these young people pursue a climate advocacy initiative through social media, through creative activism. Creative activism involves creating some designs or graphics that communicate, pass a message in a very simple and easy to understand way. Then promoting climate change education. For example, what we are doing now, we're trying to understand more about climate change in an education setup, like in a classroom setup, and having someone else who just explain to us what is climate change from their perspective or from where they're seated. So that's climate change education. We also have publication of articles. I will share with you later a website where we publish articles about climate change that educate other people about what is happening in their localities as pertains climate change. I'll share with that much later. And then finally, most importantly, it's volunteerism. The youth, if you can as a youth, it's a very good thing that you can do. It's called volunteering, and that's what we do for this project. Everybody in this project is a volunteer. So they take their time and their resources and sit down and do something that benefits the society as a whole, and that is called volunteerism. This is just a slide showing the regional hubs where which I mentioned a little earlier. You can see them. And then briefly, how do we work? How do we do our actions? Carl, there's some noise. Can you hear me clearly?
Sorry.
I can feel some noise. Am I clear?
Yeah, I think it's clear with waiting students. Or would you like to share something? Or would you like to further share something?
Sorry?
Would you like to continue?
Yes, I was continuing. I was hearing some noise, so I wanted to make sure that I'm clear enough.
Yeah, I think, do you have any questions?
Okay, nice. Let me continue.
All right.
I'll continue. So mode of actions, ClimatEducate does its work through online initiatives and through non-online initiatives. Online initiatives is like what I have taught you about writing of articles, posting on social media, doing graphics and sharing them with our networks. That's online initiative. The non-online initiative involves going to the communities. For example, going to a school and teaching the pupils and the students there about climate, or going to a particular community and participating in a tree planting exercise with them. I mean, tree planting is for the benefit of the environment. It could also involve going to a community and doing cleanup with them. And at the end of the process, you tell them why it is important to ensure this proper disposal of garbage. So that's generally how we do. So I've highlighted these two online initiatives and through local communities. And this is our website here. So if you have time and you have internet, just go in and see what other youth around the world are doing for the environment. So it's climateeducate.weebly.com, everything. You will see what I have written, you will see what Carl has written, you will see what other team members of the program have written. So feel free. This is just a highlight of the stories that we've written before. And we have amazing graphics. We have amazing people who do graphics for us so that we present our story in a very attractive way. So when you go to the website, these are some of the stories that you'll find in there. And then I think at this point, for the non-online initiative, for example, that we're doing right now, we ensure that the content that we're sharing makes sense or it relates to the target community or school that we are talking to. So whatever I'm going to present here should be able to be understood by you, and it should be able to make sense at the end of the day. And then we also ensure that you as the learners create your own understanding of climate change. For example, at the end of this exercise, I will give you a very short exercise or I say an activity. So just as we continue, just be sure that you're paying attention so that you're able to complete the activity. It's very simple, but I think it's good for us to, at the end of it, conceptualize what we have learned. And then, because I know at some point you're going to ask questions, you should be able to express your sentiments about climate crisis. So this is where your questions will come in, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then at the end of it all, we're supposed to apply whatever we learn to the immediate community and to our daily lives. So if I learned today about climate education, about climate change, how can I apply it to my daily life? So that's basically what ClimatEducate is about. And briefly now, I'm going to take you through the concept of communication and communicating about climate change and why it is important, particularly to us as young people. So in a moment, I'm going to share a different screen. That is just a highlight of the things I'm going to talk about. So let us shift to this one. And let me show you my screen from current slide. So we're calling this session Science, Climate Change, and Post-Millennials. So post-millennials are people born between, there's give and take, but born between the year 1996 and 2000 and early 2000. And then there's a millennials that are born a little earlier, maybe between the year 1989 and the year 1996. So briefly, that is the entire youth that we're talking about. If you're in that age bracket, you are a youth and all this involves you. So briefly, I'll talk about science, climate change, post-millennials, and the art of communication. So what is climate change? I'm sure you've had your own definitions about climate change and what it is, but I'm going to adopt a generic definition for this particular purpose. And that is, climate change could be defined as a change in global or regional climate patterns or weather patterns attributed largely to the increased levels of carbon dioxide produced from fossil fuels and other kind of pollution that we have, and especially industrialization. Climate change takes place over a long period of time. So if your weather changes from last year to this year, you wouldn't call that climate change, you would call that a change in weather. But if it takes place over a period of time, a decade, that's 10 years, a century, that's 100 years, that we'll call that as climate change. And over time, there are things that are showing us that the climate is actually changing. So how do we communicate climate change? I will highlight a few areas here. One of them is through reading books. You could read books written by scientists, books written by people who've experienced the climate changing, comparing different seasons, comparing different areas. So reading books really helps us to understand or to pass the message or to receive the message that is being passed by other people about climate change. Or through reading media articles. I'm not sure what media channels you have access to, but then there is TV, there is websites, there is newspapers, and all these once in a while they'll have an article or two explaining something that has changed about the climate, about the weather, about the environment where we are in. And then there's teaching in school. I mean, during classwork or during whichever subjects you're taking, there are subjects that in between, there will be topics about the environment, there will be topics about climate change. So that is another way of communicating the message of climate change. And then finally, well, the list is not exhaustive, but for my list, finally, we have advocacy. And advocacy is what we do, and that is telling other people and letting other people be aware of the change that is happening within our communities. Then why involve young people? I mean, why are young people supposed to be involved in this case? Why should I tell young people as young as 10 years, as young as 15 years or 17 years that, A, take part in climate change education because it benefits you? So just of some highlights here. because the youth are part of this beautiful universe, and you cannot separate them from where we are. You're in part of this environment, and you have a responsibility to ensure that the environment you're living in is very clean, it's clear of pollution, and that it's good for you to live in. So that is a very important reason. You need to live in a universe that is very beautiful to accommodate you and the people to come. Then the young people are the leaders and policy makers of the future. In about 5 years, in about 10 years, you'll be making key decisions about your locality, about your country, about the world. And it's important that you understand from a very early age what is happening to the environment, what is happening to the climate, and what can we do so that we can ensure that the people who come after us find a very peaceful environment to live in. And then importantly, concepts that you learn when you're young will most likely stick with you. The things that you're learning now about climate change will create a base for you to continue learning about, so there's climate change, so how does it involve me? So at the end of the day, you will want to gain more knowledge and understanding and take it and pass it to the next available people who are ready to listen to. So it's actually good we learn some of these concepts when we are young. So briefly, what has changed already from where I am sitting? Let me give you an example of Africa, and particularly Kenya, where I come from. There is declining forest cover. I'm sure this happens everywhere. We can call it in other terms deforestation. What is deforestation? Cutting down of trees and not replacing them. So we cut them down, and then what happens after that? Areas that were full of forests become deserts. We have very good examples here in Kenya because there is a good population that relies on charcoal as a source of fuel, and as a result, they're continually cutting down trees in order to produce charcoal. Then there are other people whose business relies on selling timber for construction, so they continually cut down trees. When these trees are cut down, there's no initiative to plant more trees, so over time, over a period of 10 years, over a period of 50 years, the places that had trees will turn out to be without trees. What else has changed? There's water stress. Water stress is a situation whereby we've been having enough water to use, and all of a sudden, the wells are drying up, the pipes are drying up, and we cannot replenish the sources that we've been using. This is happening in many places. I can't say it's happening in Kenya because I think our water tables are a bit high. But in other places, for example, in the you guys know Middle East, right? Saudi Arabia and such places. So prediction is that the water stress in these areas is really high, and over time they are going to have to find other ways of getting clean water to drink. And I don't think that's really good for anyone because water is life, right? Then there is something we call rising sea levels. This comes from it's a prediction actually, but it comes from the melting of the waters in the Arctic and the Antarctica, and then all the water flows into the ocean, and then the ocean levels rise. And when they rise, it means people living in the coastal areas will have some of their land submerged. I'm sure that is not a beautiful thing, okay? So that is changing in some places, and it's probably predicted to change in the near future. And finally, this one pains everybody. It's called pollution. There's land pollution, water pollution, air pollution. Sorry, excuse me. And pollution affects everybody. When land is polluted, it looks filthy. And after that, it cannot produce it as it was supposed to produce. When water is polluted, it means we are drinking dirty water. When air is polluted, it means we are breathing dirty air. And that is all all that leads to climate change. It affects how we live and how we will live in the near future. So what is predicted to change in the near future? It's just the same things I have highlighted before, but then they're going to be more pronounced, and they're going to be more cases of pollution, more cases of deforestation, more cases of water stress. And that is part of all the things that we are supposed to be understanding. Oh, oops, I got to activity before. So that is it that I have to present for you. And before I give you your activity, maybe I should just pause and hear from you and what you have to say, or if you have any questions, any clarifications, or anything you'd want me to expound on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for your time. So,
Yeah.
yes, my students will have the opportunity to ask you the questions.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
already prepared it.
Okay, great. Let me see whether I can stop. Can you see me now?
Wait. Can you see us?
Yes, I can see you.
Yeah. All right. So we can see you.
Oh, okay. Wait. You should see me.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. It's okay. I want the first group to ask the questions, if it's okay. All right. Group one. Okay. Group one. Come on. All right. So we'll just sit here and then we'll ask you the questions.
All right.
Great.
They're very shy.
No, we're all shy, but we overcome it over time. Please tell me your name.
I'm Freddie.
Yes.
Freddie.
Pretty, yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. From here. How do you come up with that kind of advocacy? Wanna try other kind of issue like poverty or corruption?
Sorry, would you kindly repeat? I think it's not very clear. How do you come up with?
Can you speak louder?
How do you come up with that kind of advocacy? Wanna try other kind of issue like poverty or corruption?
And corruption. Okay. Should I take all the questions or should I answer each at a time?
Just one.
Okay, you can answer in a short response, but
Yeah.
we only have 5 questions. So one question
Okay.
each. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to answer this one. So why we came up with this kind of advocacy in about climate education, while we have poverty and we have corruption and other things. Is that your question? Pretty? Okay, great. So we have poverty and we have corruption. So one thing you'll notice is that there's a close relationship between all these kind of problems that we're facing. Our climate change could actually be coming up in different places as a result of maybe corruption, or corruption is a driving factor that is making the climate change and climate education not really work well. But then look at it in the sense that this is the environment of the earth that we're living in. It's Mother Earth. There's no other planet. If anything happens to our planet, then we have nowhere else to go and live. So before we fight poverty and before we fight the corruption that is there in many countries, it's very big in Kenya, just so you know. So before we go to fight all that, we need to ensure that where we are seated, where we are sleeping, what we are eating, and the air we are breathing is good for us to survive. We might fight poverty, we can fight corruption, and then after that, we don't survive the effects of climate change. So it makes the climate change topic very important. As much as the other ones are important, climate change also takes like the top.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Did I answer you?
Okay. Second,
Okay.
can you do it faster, please?
Good afternoon, ma'am. So this is my question. Being a journalist,
Tell me your name, please.
Jezebel, Maria Jezebel.
You are Jezebel?
Yes.
Okay.
So my question, Being a journalist, what is the most challenging situation you have encountered so far?
Most challenging situation. Wow, it's really hard to just like select all the challenges that I have, but I'll try to mention just one. So the kind of journalist I am is there are different kinds of journalism, and there are people who are writers, and there are people who are editors, and there are people who do management, and all those are journalists. So my kind of journalism that I do right now is a linkage between my media house and other media houses around the world. So a major challenge that comes in between is not about reporting, but it's about collaboration. You know, the way you need people to come in and work with you, and they're located in different places and different parts of the world, and people do not feel like they want to cooperate in order to solve a particular problem. I would say it's not the biggest challenge, but it's one of the challenges that I face in my job as a journalist, because I need other people. For me to work well, I need the collaboration of other people. Just like when I want to fight climate change, I need collaboration from people from around the world. And if these people do not want to come in and collaborate, then it means there's a gap, and the roles cannot be achieved as well as they're intended to. So collaboration would be a big challenge.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
All right, next. Thank you. All right, third group. Third group. You're very shy though.
I'm shy too. Can you say that? So don't fear. Just come in front. Yeah, please tell me your name.
My name is Eliza.
Eliza.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
My question is, will climate change bring benefits to some areas?
Will climate change bring benefits to some areas? So this one, you have to look at the specific effects of climate change. Some effects of climate change are really bad. You do not want to go through them. For example, if climate change leads to desertification, there's not so much we can do with the desert. And if there's anything we can do with the desert, it costs us more. If climate change leads to increased sea levels, and there's people covered up by the coast and they have to relocate, it probably means that there's more that some people who originally didn't have access to the coastline now have access to coastline. But you see, this is a benefit to some people at the disadvantage of other people. So I don't think it's a good benefit at the end of it all. But ideally, I don't think the benefits of climate change exceed the disadvantages. So at the end of it all, the disadvantages are more than any benefit that would come. I mean, there could be benefits that could come up in the near future because things are always changing. But if they change and they affect us negatively, then we do not want that. Okay? Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Judy. I think we have exceeded the 40-minute time limit in Zoom. So on behalf of my class and of course for the ATO ClimatEducate Project, thank you so much for your time. All right, so
thank you so much, Carl, for this time and to the chance to talk to your amazing class. I mean, it's very good that you created time for this and for them to understand what climate change is and how we are doing it differently. Just before we go, I had promised an activity for them. So I can actually give them this activity for them to do. Let me just share my screen once again so that they can see the question. And then, so I am sharing my screen now. So this is the activity that I want you to do. The activity is list down 5 ways through which people in your locality pollute the environment. list, you can write it down so that I'll give you half a minute to just write it down. List down 5 ways through which people in your locality pollute the environment. So this list, you won't give it to me, but you give it to your teacher. I think this will help you to think clearly about what we've talked about and see whether you can conceptualize and see whatever is happening around your environment. Okay?
All right.
Okay, so
Right.
clear with everyone?
All right. So thank you so much. I think we have exceeded the limit in Zoom. So
Yes, I hope that you will be able to submit that next week. All right, next week or probably the week after that, because we have our activities here. Okay, so please take note, and I will show it to Miss Judy soon. All right.
okay. So thank you so much.
Okay.
All right,
Okay, thank you so much.
Would you
Have a
like
good
to have a
day.
picture? Would you like to have a picture with the screen and then the students?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Cool. All right.
Everyone, please go to the screen.
All right. All right. So you can. All right.
All right. Oh, no. Give some space for Miss Judy.
All right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. Wait.
All right. I think. Give some space for Miss Judy. Okay. All right. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Another one. 1, 2, 3. Sign. Climate sign. Okay. Double check. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Good. Thank you so much. Yes. Another
Thank
one.
you so much.
All right. Okay.
Yeah?
All right. Another one. Do you want another one? Is it okay? Okay. Climate.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Another one.
All right. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Give some space for Miss Judy. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. All right.
Okay, thanks.